Does anybody need a handout? Chris handed them out. Anybody get missed? I will. Yep. I told Chris if he missed anybody, I would blame him. So here you go. Good. Yeah. Everybody else have one? You're welcome. Alrighty, so we're going to finish up Mark today, Mark chapter 16, the resurrection. Just a reminder, the next couple weeks, what we'll be doing. So next week, we'll have 2 weeks of review. We've been going through this for several months now, so we'll have 2 weeks of review. Next week, we'll kind of focus on themes and people, that kind of stuff. And then Pastor will do that one, and then I'll follow up with kind of just review in general. I'll probably maybe have a quiz, these kinds of things. I always think it's kind of fun. Last time, if you remember, I kind of did a quiz for 1 Corinthians, if you remember. It was up on the screen, multiple choice. We answered it together, something like that. I always think it's kind of fun. And my goal is to get you to think. This is why often I ask questions in Bible study. It's because I want you guys to think about these things instead of me just simply telling you them. And so this is kind of the goal. So that'll be the next 2 weeks. Afterwards, we'll have a few weeks of pericope study, kind of what we're doing on Sunday morning. We'll kind of do in Bible study as well, kind of thing. And then we haven't figured out what we're doing for summer yet, but that'll be here before we know it. So that's just kind of a heads up of what is in store the next few weeks. So Mark 16, 2 weeks ago, it's been a few weeks because of Easter, we did the death of Jesus. We had finished up kind of Mark 15. So let's review that kind of quickly. What happens, or in Mark's account, what about the death of Jesus? What do we learn here? What do we see here? What do we talk about? Good. What happens when he dies, right? And what does happen when he dies? Well, yeah, but we didn't cover that. That's today's, Chris. The resurrection. Good. You get the darkness, the curtain tears, and not in Mark, but in Matthew, we have people being raised from the dead. Right? So the temple curtain is torn in two. There's dark. And what does the darkness tell us? Why darkness? Yeah, I think there's something else going on besides just sin. Yeah. But I think you can go. I wanted to just say sin. I would maybe put it God's judgment, right? God's judgment. Yep, heaped upon Christ. Good. What else? Yeah. We'll get to the curtain, but it's still about darkness. Why darkness? So one, we get God's judgment. What? I don't think so. She said it has anything to do with hell. It's more, oftentimes when we talk about the day of the Lord or eschatological things, it often is associated with darkness. So it's a way to say pay attention, right? Pay attention. Also, in the Old Testament, anytime we get the day of the Lord or God coming back, it's always kind of associated with darkness. We just looked a few weeks ago, and with the sixth graders, we read the book of Joel, and there we get the day of the Lord. There we read it's about kind of darkness, right? So it's this idea of eschatological thing, end time things. Yeah, the end of time and end of life, right? Darkness kind of is always associated with this. These are things we should think about. So with the curtain being torn in two, what did we talk about with that? Yeah, the division between holy and unholy, or the division between God and man is gone, right? That now you don't need the holy of holies anymore because of Jesus. Um, Hebrews really dives into this, right? The book of Hebrews really focuses on Jesus as the high priest. So we really read this in the book of Hebrews the most. Good. What else? We kind of talked about with this. This is why I use my own headset. I always have to fix the ear. It's annoying. Where is heaven? Good, wherever God is, right? Heaven is wherever God is, right? This is why in Matthew, not in Mark, but in Matthew, you get Jesus saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand, right? Because there he is, right? So the curtain is torn in two because, well, that kind of separates not only unholy and holy, but it also kind of separates heaven from earth. Now there is, in some way, no separation because of Jesus as well, right? Now there is a separation from here and now, but on the last day there will be no separation. But we also get that with the temple curtain being torn in two. So we see all of these things. Anything else with a couple of weeks ago? Good, yeah. All of this is fulfilling prophecy, right? We looked at Isaiah 53 is the easiest one to see with these things. But good, this is all fulfilling prophecy from the Old Testament. Very good. And we should point out Jesus' own prophecy. Now, that won't come until chapter 16 with his resurrection. There we see it clearly. But Jesus' own prophecy as well. Yeah. Who confesses who Jesus is? Good, the centurion, right? This is a theme we see in Mark. The minor characters, right? The minor characters see who Jesus is. The major characters, the disciples, the Pharisees, those kind of people don't understand who Jesus is. But the minor characters do, right? So you get the Sanhedrin, the centurion, who understands who Jesus is. And what's the nationality of the centurion? Yeah, he's a Gentile, right? Remember, any Roman soldier is not allowed to serve where they lived or grew up. So any Roman soldiers we run into in the Gospels or run into in Israel are automatically Gentile. They will not allow Jews to serve where Jews were. So he's a Gentile on top of this, right? On top of a centurion knowing this, he's a Gentile who confesses who Jesus is. Then we get Joseph of Arimathea. And how is Joseph of Arimathea described? Good, a respected member of the council, right? This is the first thing we are told. He's a respected member of the council. And what's significant about that? Well, yeah, who's the council? What? Yeah, the Sanhedrin, right? The Sanhedrin's kind of the ones who put Jesus to death, right? So we get met to Joseph of Arimathea. He's a respected member of the council. We're like, oh boy, right? This is somebody against Jesus. But then what else are we told? Yeah, he was looking for the kingdom of God and took courage, right? We realize that he takes courage because he's looking for the kingdom of God and he buries Jesus. So we begin to see the faith of Joseph of Arimathea. And I talked about usually if somebody was crucified, no one would claim the body because you didn't want to be associated with them, right? But Joseph of Arimathea comes and takes the body, which is this is courageous, right? He's a member of the council. The council kind of put him to death. And yet he comes and takes care of Jesus' body. We should not forget this about him. Good, and then you have the Marys following Jesus, following Joseph as he lays Jesus in the tomb. Anything else? Alrighty, we'll jump into Mark. We'll start with Mark 1 through 8, and we'll kind of talk about 9 to the end once we get there. But Mark 1 through 8. When the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome bought spices, so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. And they were saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" And looking back, they saw that the stone had been rolled back. It was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. He said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen, he is not here. See the place where they laid him, but go. Tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. First, I had this question come up in my Wednesday Bible study. So I don't actually have this on the sheet, but I want to talk about it just in case any of you have this question. And the question was, these 3 days, how do they get 3 days, right? Because we know Friday, Jesus is buried, right? And then we get Saturday. That's the Sabbath. Nothing happens, right? We kind of skip by the Sabbath. And then we get to Sunday, and we get the resurrection. Right? So kind of by our counting, it would be 2 days, right? If you look from Friday to Sunday, we would say that's 2 days, not 3 days. How the Jews count days, I don't know if they still do it today. They might, at least during this time. So he's buried on Friday. That's day 1. So remember, Jewish days are from 6 to 6, 6 p.m. to 6 p.m., or 5:59 p.m., right? So he's buried before the Sabbath. So he's buried sometime before 6 o'clock. He dies at 3, we're told that, but he's buried sometime before 6 o'clock. So we have a 3-hour window because of the Sabbath. So they would count that as day 1. Day 2, then a Saturday, and then the 3rd, they would count Sunday itself as another day. So you can say maybe on the 3rd day, or he was 3 days in the tomb. By us, we'd be like, maybe 2 days. It kind of looks like 1. And by how they count days, it would be he was in the tomb 3 days, because they count the day he was buried. So just in case you're kind of wondering about that, how do we get 3 days? This is how the Jews counted days. I just wanted to throw that out there just in case you're wondering this, because somebody had asked the question. Usually if somebody asks that question, other people do. So hopefully that helps. And I had never thought about this. My commentary pointed this out. That God often works salvation in the night, and then in the morning it becomes apparent what he has done. So I've given a few examples of the Old Testament. So 1 Samuel 5. The god Dagon had fallen on its face before the Ark of the Covenant. And this is then the verse. "And when the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, behold, Dagon had fallen face downward on the ground before the ark of the Lord." So notice this had happened in the night, and in the morning they had realized this. Right, so we see it there. Isaiah 37. "Hezekiah is saved from the Assyrians after the angel of the Lord strikes down 185,000 at night. When the people arose early in the morning, behold, these were all dead bodies." So notice God does this in the night. In the morning they see this. Then Daniel 6, Daniel in the lion's den. "Then at the break of day the king arose," "and went in haste to the den of lions." So there we see it again, right? So we begin to see this in the Old Testament. God works salvation at night. In the morning his people see this. But it's accomplished at night. So if we then turn to the Psalms, we see this in the Psalms. So I think this helps us actually understand some of the Psalms. So Psalm 59, verse 16. Psalm 59, verse 16. But I will sing of your strength. I will sing aloud of your steadfast love in the morning, for you have been to me a fortress and a refuge in the day of my distress. So notice there, right, the singing in the morning. So we get that there. Psalm 143. Psalm 143, verse 8. Let me hear in the morning of your steadfast love, for in you I trust. Make me know the way I should go, for to you I lift up my soul. There, once again, right, we get this morning. And then the last one, we get this in other Psalms, but these are just some of the examples. Psalm 30, verse 5. For his anger is but for a moment, and his favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes with the morning. Right? So we, especially in the Psalms, we get this celebration, rejoicing. Joy comes in the morning. Right? Notice all of these things, they come in the morning. Why? Because God works his salvation at night. And in the morning they see this. Right? This is how God typically, not always, typically works. That at night he works salvation, and in the morning his people see this. So this is what we read in the Psalms. This is what we see in the Old Testament. So why do I bring this up? Because most likely Jesus probably rose during the night, and in the morning it was apparent. Right? This kind of makes sense of how God operates. We talked a few weeks ago, somebody asked, when did Jesus descend into hell? We don't have, the definitive time. The answer probably is at night. Why? Because God works his salvation at night, and in the morning it is apparent, right? The ladies go to the tomb early in the morning, and there they see it's empty already. So he probably rose during the night. So this is just how we kind of begin to see God work. Any questions or comments so far? Alrighty. So let's then turn to Malachi chapter 4, verse 2. This kind of goes, I'll read Mark 16, verse 2, and very early on the first day of the week when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. So if we read Malachi, chapter 4, verse 2, start of verse 1, for behold, the day is coming, burning like an oven, when all the arrogant and all the evildoers will be stubble. The day that is coming shall set them ablaze, says the Lord of hosts, so that it will leave them neither roots nor branch. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings, and you shall go out leaping like calves from the stall. So I think you kind of get this a little bit, this harken back to Malachi, right? Here we get the Son of Righteousness in Malachi. We're told the sun rose early in the morning. So we kind of get this, I think, a little bit this play on words of sun. That brings us back to Malachi, that the Son of Righteousness will come and destroy all evil. His people will leap like calves. It's a joyful and wonderful day. When do they come to the tomb as the sun is risen? It kind of brings us back to Malachi, this idea that the Son of Righteousness has risen, which is kind of cool. So we begin to see that with Malachi as well. Hopefully by this time we realize Malachi 4 is a very important chapter. It's probably a book of the Bible we don't spend much time on, but Malachi 4, you get John the Baptist coming, right? You get the Son of Righteousness. A lot happens actually in just a few short verses. All right, so they go to this tomb. How is the angel described? So a young man. How else? Dressed in white. Yeah, a young man dressed in white. Angels often appear as young men. You get when the angels appear to Abraham and Sarah, right there, we're told that they're men. Here is a young man. dressed in white. White, of course, holiness, purity, these kinds of ideas. We get an angel here that appears human. It's interesting. We obviously know by this, Old Testament, that angels can appear in human form. They, of course, are not human, but they can appear in human form. But oftentimes when we get the description of angels, it's pretty actually terrifying. If you ever actually look up like a artist rendition that's like biblically accurate, it's terrifying. So why do they appear as men usually? Because, well, it's a lot less terrifying for the people that they're showing up to, right? Especially once they have good news, right? Think of the angels at Christmas, the angel appearing to Mary, the angel here, right? They don't want to, they show up kind of usually looking like men, and yet what does almost every angel say? Yeah, do not be afraid. So even angels, when they're not supposed to be frightening, show up and people are frightened of them. And so this is just kind of what we get. But here he writes a young man dressed in a white robe. I think part of this is just the idea is the proclamation, right? He doesn't want to hide the proclamation, right? He doesn't want to be have them stumble over the proclamation because of what he looks like, right? So he appears in human form for this reason. So how does the angel, this is interesting, I think, how does the angel describe Jesus? What? Good. So he's Jesus of Nazareth, right? I don't think this would be us, right? If Jesus had risen from the dead, and we are the first ones to tell somebody, we would probably not say Jesus of Nazareth, right? Jesus, the Son of God. Jesus, second person of the Trinity, something about his divinity. Nope, he's Jesus of Nazareth. Why? I don't know. Maybe so they don't get confused. Maybe we stumbled upon the wrong tomb. Or just for the sake of clarity. No, I'm speaking of this Jesus, right? This Jesus of Nazareth. Anybody know what Jesus is the Greek version of? What Hebrew name? What? Yeah, Yeshua, Joshua. Yep, very good. Joshua, right? So it's the Greek. So you probably had several Jesuses running around, like we have several Marys running around at this time. So I think it's part of it, the specific of this. This is Jesus of Nazareth, right? This is who I'm talking about. Make no mistake. This idea that this is who I am. How else does he describe him? Yeah, he was crucified, right? He died. So once again, make no mistake, he did die, right? So you get these theories all, right? The swoon theory, he wasn't actually dead, but somehow he managed to pull the tomb away, 3 days later, or roll the stone away 3 days later. No, he was crucified, but now he is risen, right? Jesus of Nazareth was crucified, but now he's risen. The angel doesn't have any wiggle room. This is how it is. This is how it's straight to the point. Who are the first witnesses of the resurrection? Yeah, the Marys, right? Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, right? The Marys. What's significant about this? Yeah, so the women were always there, right? We're told this at the end of chapter 15, that the women had been following and had been helping them. Verse 41, 15 verse 41, when he was in Galilee, they followed him and ministered to him. And there were also other women who came up with him to Jerusalem, right? So we're told these women followed him, right? They helped them out financially, probably giving them food, this kind of thing. Good. Why else is this significant? Why was that? Good. They saw where he was laid, right? We are told at the end of chapter 15 they followed. So they knew where he was laid. Very good. Why else? Um, I think so. She is the one who poured perfume on Jesus' feet. Good. There's another big one. You got to think like first century people. Well, yeah, the women were not seen as credible as men. Right? So if you're writing a story in the first century, if you're talking about the resurrection of Jesus, the first people he would appear to would not be women. It would be probably to his disciples or to men, but not to women. Right? Women were not seen as credible as men. And yet, who did Jesus appear to? First to the women. Not to his disciples, right? In fact, he tells the women to go tell his disciples. He doesn't visit his disciples until that evening, right? Doubting Thomas is what we have today. Until that evening does he actually go and visit them. This is kind of significant, right? And we see this. What does Jesus do, right? He goes to the lowliest, the humble, the poor in spirit, these kinds of people, right? He goes to them and proclaims victory. He goes to the women first before he even goes to his own disciples. Yes. Yeah, and typically the women would prepare a body for burial as well. Yep. That's what they were going to the tomb to do. Yep. And this is so you get like the Gospel of Thomas that's written in like the 300s. And one of the reasons it's written is the account of the resurrection is different. Jesus visits men first. What's wrong with the gospel account? So, well, first of all, the resurrection is seen by women first, and we got to change that. Right? No, Jesus visits the women first. They get the privilege. They get the honor of this. Not Peter, not James, not John. Mary and Mary. They get the honor of seeing the resurrected Jesus first, which is cool. We talked about this in Genesis. So the angel of the Lord almost always, one example of it not being the case is in Isaiah, the angel of the Lord killing 185,000. There we want to say is the pre-incarnate Jesus, but almost always is the pre-incarnate Jesus. Where do we first see the angel of the Lord appear? Review from my Genesis people. Who does he appear to first? No. Old Testament. Hagar. We first see Jesus appearing to Hagar. We would not expect this, right? Maybe Abraham, maybe Noah. Nope. Hagar. And Hagar doesn't even get the promise, right? Sarah does. Why Hagar? Jesus shows up to that which is the lowliest, that which seems to be on the outside. That's who he shows up to first. And this is what then we see with the resurrection. The same exact thing. It's just cool. This is how God works, right? Not those who are mighty, but those who are lowly. Not those who are strong, but those who are weak, right? He chose Israel because they were the weakest nation of them all to show his power. So this is what we see. The first witnesses of the resurrection are women. And God honors these women for their faithfulness, for what they have done. Anything there? Questions or comments? So why Peter? The angel tells him to go tell Peter and the disciples. Yeah, Peter's the one who denied him 3 times. Yeah, I think this is the exact case, right? Peter's the one who denies him 3 times, right? All of them abandon him besides John, right? John kind of doesn't. We're told, remember, Peter is in the courtyard of the high priest, and the reason Peter can be in the courtyard of the high priest is because the high priest knows John. How? I have no idea. John is a fisherman from Galilee, so how does the high priest who basically lives in Jerusalem and is part of the upper society know John? Who knows? But somehow they know John. So that's how Peter gets in so far, right? We're told John is there at the crucifixion as well. So pretty much everybody besides John abandons Jesus, or you have Peter, who stays with Jesus for a little bit and then denies him 3 times and runs away. I think this is to bring Peter back into the fold, right? A few weeks ago, when I was supposed to lead Bible study and Dan and Pastor did in my stead, I talked about the difference between Judas and Peter, right? That Judas could have been forgiven and redeemed and brought back, right? But Judas instead is so wrecked with guilt, he instead goes and commits suicide. Peter, who's also wrecked with guilt, is forgiven, right? He comes back, he repents, and is forgiven. I would say, could the same thing have been said of Judas? The answer is yes. So we see the difference between Judas and Peter here, right? So why Peter? To bring him back to the fold. Peter, don't worry. You denied me 3 times, and yet I am the one that is faithful. Right? Old Testament stuff again. Israel abandons God. God is the one who remains faithful to Israel despite all of this. This is what we're seeing here. Right? Peter denies him 3 times, and yet God brings Peter back to the fold. So where is Jesus going? Galilee, right? He's going back to Galilee. And this shouldn't surprise us, and this shouldn't surprise his disciples. If we turn back to 14, verse 28. And Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Right? Jesus himself has predicted that after he is risen, he is going to Galilee. Right? This gets back to the prophecies. So this shouldn't surprise him that after Jesus is risen, he goes to Galilee. He said he would. He told his disciples this. But the angel wants to make sure that they remember what he has said. This is another theme we see in the book of Mark. Believing then seeing versus seeing then believing. Right? In Mark, it's believing then seeing. Easiest example, right? The woman with the discharge of blood. She believes Jesus can heal her before she even sees it happen. Right? They believe in the resurrection before they even see Jesus. Right? They see the empty tomb, but they haven't seen Jesus yet, and yet they believe. Believing before seeing. You get the blind man. Remember the blind man when Jesus spits on? Right? The blind man confesses who Jesus is before he can even physically see. Right? Believing before seeing. Now, compare this to in chapter 15, right? They're mocking Jesus as he hangs on the cross, and what do they say? Come down, save yourself, and then we will believe. Right? They want to see and then believe. But in the book of Mark, it's always the opposite. You believe and then you see. This is obviously not in Mark, but this is in many ways John 20, right? Doubting Thomas. Right? Thomas is saying, I'll see and then I'll believe. And what does Jesus do? Rebukes him. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. Right? But we see this in Mark. Believing and then seeing. Right? So for the disciples, what does this mean? By going to Galilee, right? They believe that he will actually be in Galilee, and then they will see him. Yeah, right? We believe before we see him. Yep. So. Yeah, yep. Believing and faith would be kind of synonyms. Yep. So we get then this debate about whether or not Mark ends at chapter 8. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But if Mark originally ended, at verse 8, not chapter 8, at verse 8, why do you think Mark would end it at verse 8? And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Yeah, so why end in verse 8? Good, so what was planned was accomplished, so from there on out, they just go and spread the word. Yeah, so here, good, so here they don't tell anyone, but maybe for the readers, for us as readers, right, it has been accomplished, and they tell the ladies to go and tell. Maybe for us as readers, it has been accomplished, and we should then go and tell, right? So maybe that's one reason. I think it's a good reason. Any other thoughts? I think a little bit plays in the theme of believing then seeing. Why do we need to get the rest of Mark? We're told what's happened. Right? So the question becomes then, does Mark end at verse 8 or not? There's been much ink spilled about this. Probably in your Bibles they have a note that says some of the early manuscripts do not include 9 through 20. My personal belief is that Mark ends at verse 8. It ends at verse 8. Yeah, it tells a little bit. Yep. So I think it ends at verse 8 for a couple of different reasons. First, as the Bible points out, the earliest manuscripts does not have 9 through 20. That's a pretty big indicator. Probably somebody added it. Another part is, as we read this, we'll look at it. As we read and look at it, it doesn't really sound like Mark. We've now been through Mark, and hopefully you two will kind of notice this doesn't really sound like Mark. And the Greek kind of bears this out a little bit as well. So why, if 9 through 20 is added later, why add it later? Probably because Mark is the only one that doesn't have anything kind of post-resurrection. Right? Matthew has the ascension. He has go and therefore make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, right? John has doubting Thomas. Luke, you have the ascension. You have the disciples on the road to Emmaus. Everybody has post-resurrection stories besides Mark. So I think part of it is to kind of harmonize with all the other Gospels that have post-resurrection stories and Mark doesn't. I think that's part of it. Kind of to fill in the blanks. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah. Now, I want to be clear. Maybe it is part of the original manuscript. Maybe it is. But if it isn't, this is number 1 under 9 through 19. Even if this section was not in the original part of Mark, it changes nothing we believe. There is no new doctrine only found in this part. I want to make that clear. Right? Our faith does not hinge on these 11 verses. We'll have in the Catechism, in the Confessions as well, we'll quote verse 16. All who are baptized will be saved. But we get that in other places, right? We get that in Romans chapter 6. Do you not know that all of us who have been baptized into Christ has been baptized into his death and burial, and therefore we will be raised in a resurrection like Christ? Right? So anything we have in Mark, the end of Mark 16, we have in other places of the Bible. So our faith does not hinge on the end of Mark 16. If it's not originally part of the Bible. So I don't want your consciences to be burdened by this if it's not. Anything that's here we see in other places of the Bible. We get this in John as well. I think it's John 8. We have a story in John 8 that doesn't appear in early manuscripts either. So we do get this in a few other places. Before we dive into 9 through 20, any questions or comments about that? My guess would be that's probably at least initially, right? We're told in other Gospels that they do. So they probably left the tomb and they were afraid. They just didn't tell anybody. Eventually, they do tell the disciples. Yeah. Yep. I think it's just this moment of awe, of trembling, of fear, like you can't believe what you have seen. You can't even talk. You're just trying to process all of this. And I think that's kind of all that they're going through at this time. We're even told Mary later, right? I think this is in Matthew. She thinks Jesus is the gardener. So they see the empty tomb. The angel tells them this, and maybe they themselves don't necessarily believe it until they see Jesus as well. So, yeah, maybe no one would believe them anyway. Yeah. To be fair, if, you buried your friend and then, your friend said, hey, we went to the tomb and it's gone, you might have a hard time believing too, right? Now, I bring this up in my sermon. Should, like Thomas, believe? The answer is yes. But we can be gracious enough to realize we ourselves would maybe have a hard time believing this, right? We should be humble enough to realize that. So, anything else? Alrighty, 9 through 20. Now, when he rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. She went and told those who had been with him as they mourned and wept. But when they heard that he was alive and had been seen by her, they would not believe it. After these things, he appeared in another form to 2 of them, as they were walking into the country, and they went back and told the rest, but they did not believe them. Afterward, he appeared to the 11 themselves as they reclined at table, and rebuked them for their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they did not believe those who saw him after he had risen. And he says to them, go into the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name they will cast out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up serpents with their hands, and if they drink any deadly poison, it will not hurt them. They will lay their hands on the sick, and they will recover. So when the Lord Jesus, after he had spoken to them, was taken up into heaven and sat down at the right hand of God, and they went out and preached everywhere, while the Lord worked with them and confirmed the message by accompanying signs. The other thing that this does, these verses, what stories are these verses alluding to? At least 2 other stories. What? So ascension, good, you get ascension. I wasn't thinking of ascension, but that works. Yeah, the road to Emmaus, right? This is 12 through 13. He appeared in another form to 2 of them. They were walking into the country, and they went back and told the rest, right? That's road to Emmaus. And then what else does he kind of allude to? Pentecost, but doubting Thomas, right? He appeared to the 11 themselves as they were reclining at a table, and he rebuked them for their unbelief. I think this is alluding to doubting Thomas. Right, so notice what these verses do. They're alluding to other stories found in the other Gospels. This is another reason why I don't think it's part of the original manuscript. Right, it's bringing those stories into Mark. So this is kind of what we're seeing in this section. So number 2, first day of the week, right? We're told first day of the week denotes not just Sunday, but a new beginning, a new creation. Right? The first day of the week is a new beginning. So this would be the 8th day, right? The 7th day, God rested, which would be the Sabbath, Saturday. The first day of the week would be Sunday, a new creation, 8 days. So 8 days, we get a few things. First, we get circumcision. On the 8th day, after a male is born, on the 8th day they are circumcised. Right? A new creation, a new beginning. Why? Once again, we just covered this in actually Genesis. Why circumcision? Why does God give them circumcision? Or commands them to circumcise? Good, so wants to separate them from other nations, from other people. Good, why else? Circumcision is a visible reminder of God's covenant. It's a visible reminder of God's promise. Right? So what's this promise? That he will send a Savior to crush the serpent. A new beginning, right? Circumcision is the visible promise of a new beginning, a new creation. And what does this sign take place on the 8th day? Right? So as they're circumcised on the 8th day, it's supposed to remember this new creation, this new promise. So when I see risen on the 8th day, a new creation, a new beginning. So it's this wonderful thing of idea of something new has come. The old has passed away, the new has come. So not 8 days, but we get the flood. 8 people are saved, right? Noah and his 3 sons and all of their wives. 8 people are saved, which is often, we don't have this, but often baptismal fonts are 8-sided. So remember that God saved 8 people in the flood. So there in the flood, we get 8 people. A new creation is beginning in the flood, so to speak, right? The old has drowned, the new has come. The Passover is followed by 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? And the Passover is obviously celebration. They're celebrating that they have gone from slavery to freedom. So the Passover itself, on the 8th day, a new beginning, a new thing. 8 days is 8 is very important, and 8 days is very important in the Bible of new beginning, new creation. Something is happening. So on the first day of the week, on the 8th day of the week, something has happened. Then we have this wonderful quote from the Venerable Bede. He was a saint during the 800s. A woman first tasted death, but in Mary Magdalene, woman first saw the resurrection. So he brings it all the way back to Genesis, right? As Eve takes the fruit and bites of it, she was the first one to literally taste death, right? Literally taste death. And yet a woman is also the first one to see the resurrection. Paul kind of does this in Romans, but he does so from Adam, right? The first Adam sinned, the second Adam did not, right? He talks about the first Adam, the second Adam. Here we kind of get the first woman, the kind of in some ways the last one, right? The first woman tasted death, but Mary Magdalene is the first one, a woman to actually see the resurrection. So in some ways, he connects this to redeeming womanhood. As Jesus himself redeems all mankind and mankind itself, this kind of redeems women in some ways to speak, which is kind of cool. I had never really thought about that, but this is what we kind of get. This also gets to when we talked about, why does Jesus appear to the woman first? And we talked about this a few weeks ago, what it means to be great and what it means to be first, right? You have James and John who argue, and their own mother petitions Jesus. Let them sit at your right hand and on your left hand, right? Let them have positions of power in your kingdom. And we get at least twice the disciples arguing among themselves about which one of them is the greatest. And Jesus has to continue to teach them what it means to be great, what it means to serve, to be last, to be humble, right? And I think this is what we see here with appearing to Mary first as well. What does it mean to be great and to be first? As we talked about, you would not expect it to be Mary Magdalene, right? Maybe the disciples. Maybe somebody else, but not a woman, not Mary Magdalene. And yet that is who Jesus blesses with first appearing before is Mary. What does it mean to be great and to be first? So we see this then, who Jesus appears to. What does this look like? It's another lesson Jesus is teaching not just us, but his disciples as well. This is what we see here. Yeah, the disciples all scattered, but the women stayed, right? Who remained faithful? The women did, right? They followed Joseph to the tomb. And we're told that they followed Jesus throughout his ministry. So they probably knew, other people probably knew they were followers of Jesus. not just his disciples. Yeah, very good point. As I said, verse 16 is used in the small catechism and the fourth chief parts of baptism. What benefits does baptism give? So you'll see this in the small catechism. They'll quote Mark 16, verse 16, which is fine. Like I said, we have this in other parts too. This is just much more, succinct. But what are signs of those who believe, right? Mark tells us that there will be signs. What signs does he give? Yeah, good. Cast out demons, speak in tongues. Yeah, poison, right? They will, if they're drinking a poison, it will not hurt them. Pick up serpents with their hands. Once again, I think this is just alluding. To other stories we've had at this point when this is written. Right? We're told in Acts the disciples cast out demons. The disciples healed people. We're told that, right? We're told in Acts the people were bringing out the sick and the lame so Peter's shadow could fall on them. Because Peter was doing all of these wonderful things, or God through Peter. Speaking of tongues, we see that in the New Testament. That is Pentecost. You had brought up Pentecost. I think that's bringing up Pentecost as well. You have Peter, he doesn't drink poison, Paul. But remember, Paul is bitten by a poisonous snake, and they're all like, yep, he's a dead guy. No one has survived this, and he ends up being fine, and they all start worshiping him as a deity. This is, I think, Acts 27 or Acts 28. And Paul's like, nope, I'm not a deity. I can point you to the God who saved me. So I think all of these stories are just alluding to something that's already taken place. Any questions about Mark 16? Or comments? Thoughts? Yeah, these are... Right? Yeah, these are very just short. And notice, usually, remember in Mark, we get the word immediately all the time. Remember the first beginning of Mark, you get immediately. Then it kind of in the middle of Mark, it goes away. And at the end of the Mark, the word comes back. Immediately, things happen. And suddenly, we get all these really quick stories and no immediately. Does that point out it's not Mark? No, but you would expect this. And it's just kind of a short story that doesn't flow, right? None of these flow from one from another. They're just kind of thrown together. It reminds me a little bit of either you got to the end of a paper or you're running out of time, so you just start throwing everything into your paper at the very end. Like you just start typing stuff like, yep, this and this and this, you throw it in, like, at least I said it. At least maybe you were better than me. But that's the one that kind of reminded me of like, oh, ran out of time, throw this story in, throw this story in. It doesn't seem like the rest of Mark to me. It doesn't flow with the rest of Mark. That combined with the earliest manuscripts don't have it. I just don't think it's part of Mark. But like I said, there's nothing really new here that should shatter our faith or weaken our faith. So, anything else? Alrighty then. Well, it's been fun going through Mark. I hope you've enjoyed it, that you've learned quite a bit. And that the reviews the next few weeks will help you. We're a little bit early, but that's perfectly fine. Let's close then with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.